Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves standing on the edge of panic. The air smells faintly of smoke and petrol, and the distant thunder you hear isn't a storm, it's artillery. It's early September 1914, and Paris, that glittering city of lights and lovers, has turned gray and breathless. The streets are jammed with refugees, farmers pushing carts, mothers clutching infants, old men too proud to leave until the last moment. Cars choke the boulevards, abandoned when their tanks ran dry. And above it all, a single monoplane hums across the pale morning sky, the Iron Cross painted on its wings. It drops a few crude bombs that rattle windows, and one leaflet, fluttering down like a cruel joke. The German army is at the gates of Paris. You probably wouldn't survive this kind of stress. But don't worry, we're only visiting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from anywhere in the world, drop your city and local time in the comments. I always love seeing who's sharing these late-night journeys. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the headquarters of the city's military governor, Joseph Gallieni, a wiry man with keen eyes behind round spectacles. His uniform is neat, his voice calm, and when he speaks, there's no trace of fear. "I have received the mandate to defend Paris against the invader," he says. "That mandate I shall carry out to the end." Outside, bells toll in half-deserted churches. Soldiers dig shallow trenches in the parks where lovers once picnicked. For the first time since 1871, the French capital feels the breath of an enemy closing in. To understand how the world arrived at this boiling point, you rewind the calendar by 1 month, to August 1914. Europe is still gilded with the illusion of order. Trains run on time, telegrams zip across borders, and every great power believes its army is the best in the world. Germany, under Kaiser Wilhelm II, has long feared a nightmare scenario, a two-front war. France in the west, Russia in the east. The generals had prepared a plan, polished over years of staff room theorizing. The Schlieffen Plan. The plan's logic is simple, almost elegant in its cruelty. France is fast, Russia is slow. If Germany can crush France in roughly 6 weeks, the fabled 42 days, then its railways can swing the whole German army east to deal with Russia. To pull this off, Germany must violate neutral Belgium, sweeping through its flat plains to strike France from the north, bypassing the fortress line along the Franco-German border. It's like trying to knock out your neighbor by climbing through a third neighbor's window. Quick, unexpected, but guaranteed to cause scandal. At dawn on the 4th of August 1914, German columns cross the Belgian border. The invasion triggers outrage. Britain, bound by treaty, declares war. In the east, Russian mobilization starts earlier than anyone predicted, throwing the German timetable into chaos before the first week is done. Yet in the west, the great tide of German soldiers, millions of boots, bayonets glinting, rolls forward with precision that stuns observers. You imagine yourself among them. Endless ranks, trudging through the dust of late summer. The sound of hobnailed boots echoing off church walls. Every soldier carries 60 pounds of kit, and in those first weeks, they still believe they'll be home by Christmas. Villagers line the roads, handing out bread and apples. Even the officers joke that Paris is only a fortnight's march away. Across the border, France moves to strike first under its own doctrine, Plan 17. A feverish blueprint steeped in the romantic belief that courage can overcome bullets. The French High Command envisions a lightning thrust into Alsace-Lorraine, those provinces lost in 1871, to reclaim national pride and catch Germany off guard. Their armies go to war dressed like it's still 1870. Bright blue coats, red trousers, and plumed shakos. Soldiers march singing La Marseillaise, bayonets glittering in the sun. It's stirring stuff until the machine guns open up. The first clashes, collectively called the Battle of the Frontiers, erupt across a massive arc stretching from Belgium to the Vosges Mountains. Over 2 million troops are thrown into combat within days. In the rolling hills near Charleroi and Lorraine, French regiments charge shouting, "Vive la France!" only to be cut down in rows by unseen gunners. Their generals had preached offensive à outrance, attack at all costs, even without artillery support. The result is slaughter. One contemporary quip from a British officer captures the absurdity. The French fight like heroes, armed as if by mistake. It isn't far from the truth. Historians still argue whether those red trousers were a matter of misplaced pride or bureaucratic stubbornness. But either way, they turned French soldiers into moving targets against the gray-green backdrop of early autumn fields. Meanwhile, the small but professional British Expeditionary Force, BEF, lands in northern France under Sir John French. These men are veterans, disciplined riflemen, capable of firing 15 aimed rounds a minute. At Mons, they hold their ground long enough to convince German commanders they're facing machine guns. Yet, the weight of numbers tells. Facing overwhelming German corps, the Allies are forced into what becomes known as the Great Retreat. Imagine the scene. Dust clouds rising from endless columns of men and horses. Carts filled with wounded creaking southward. The heat is unbearable, the stench of sweat and fear thick. Cavalry screens duel on distant ridges, while rearguards trade shells and rifle fire to buy precious hours for the main body. Every mile feels like a century. The French commander-in-chief, General Joseph Joffre, remains outwardly calm. Behind his walrus mustache and impenetrable expression, he studies the maps like a chess master accepting sacrifice to save the game. He knows the retreat can't last forever. If the Germans reach Paris, France could collapse. Yet there's one advantage France holds: railways. From his headquarters, Joffre begins a massive redeployment, using the nation's intricate rail network to shuffle entire armies like cards. Divisions vanish from the Eastern Front and reappear west of the capital within days. In Paris, Gallieni converts depots into barracks, bridges into choke points, and railway lines into lifelines. By early September, German cavalry patrols have pushed to within 13 kilometers of Paris. The city's residents can hear the rumble of distant guns. Shops shutter, government ministries evacuate to Bordeaux, and rumors swirl that the Germans will march down the Champs-Élysées within the week. In one eerie moment, a German Zeppelin drifts above the city at dusk, its shadow gliding over the rooftops like a passing whale. Children point, adults duck for cover, but behind the facade of despair, Gallieni works tirelessly. He's a colonial veteran, toughened in Madagascar, meticulous in logistics. When he looks at the maps spread before him, he sees something the Germans don't. Their momentum is outrunning their supply lines. The Belgian rail network lies in ruins. Wagons bog down in mud, and men march faster than food can reach them. It's the old paradox of the offensive. Speed breeds vulnerability. Paris will defend itself, Gallieni tells his aides, voice steady. We will fight on the Marne if necessary. You picture the candlelight flickering over his face as he signs orders. Couriers rush into the night. Locomotives whistle in the distance, and an entire nation seems to hold its breath. The world's most modern war has arrived, but no one yet realizes what it will cost. Somewhere along the front, a French lieutenant scribbles in his diary, "We are retreating again, but I do not believe we are defeated." He can't know that within a week, that belief, fueled by desperation, discipline, and one improbable taxi ride, will help save Paris itself. For now, the guns fall silent over the darkening fields, and the city of light waits for dawn. Dawn breaks over Europe like a spreading bruise. Bruised skies, bruised hearts, bruised fields. You find yourself standing in the wake of August 1914, watching the Schlieffen Plan unfold like a clockwork mechanism wound too tight. The German war machine is in motion. Boots, bayonets, and railway timetables. At its head, confident officers trace graceful arcs on maps showing how France will fall in 42 days. That's all it should take they believe. 42 days, then a swift turn east to crush Russia. A neat, mathematical war. What could possibly go wrong? You march beside the German First Army under General Alexander von Kluck, one of 7 massive forces sweeping westward. Each army is a steel wave, meticulously timed to hit the French left and roll it up toward Paris. The right wing, von Kluck's force, carries the weight of the entire plan. It must swing wide through Belgium, pivot south, and envelop the French armies like a giant arm wrapping around prey. If all goes well, the French will collapse before the Russians can do anything meaningful. Belgium, of course, is not thrilled by the idea. When Germany demands safe passage, King Albert I refuses, politely but firmly. His country's neutrality, guaranteed by treaty, means everything. Germany's response is blunt: invade anyway. On the 4th of August, 1914, German troops crossed the border, and within days, the small Belgian army finds itself facing the largest invasion in European history. You stand on a dusty road outside Liège, a fortress city surrounded by 12 concrete forts. The Belgians fight with unexpected ferocity. For days, they hold up the German advance, an act of defiance that shocks the invaders and delays the entire timetable. It takes massive 420mm siege guns, nicknamed Big Berthas, to smash the forts into submission. The sound is apocalyptic. Villagers miles away mistake it for thunder. The Germans finally capture Liège, but time has already slipped from their grasp. Historians still argue whether this delay mattered. Some say it cost the Germans the war right here. Others call that sentimental hindsight. What's certain is that every day lost gives France and Britain more time to mobilize, to dig in, to breathe. As the German columns push deeper into Belgium, the world sees its first glimpse of modern, total war. Villages burn, bridges crumble, and terrified civilians stream down every road. German officers, fearing guerrilla resistance, commit reprisals that will stain their reputation. The destruction of Louvain, libraries and all. The phrase "rape of Belgium" becomes a rallying cry in Allied propaganda, painting the invaders as barbarians. The irony is bitter. Many of those soldiers believe they're bringing civilization. You trudge with them, your boots caked in dust. The heat is unbearable, and rations already short. Belgian civilians stare with a mixture of fear and hatred as the long gray snake of soldiers winds through their towns. Some Germans send postcards home, boasting they'll dine in Paris within the month. Others just want clean water and a letter from their wives. Humanity persists, even inside the machine. Meanwhile, to the south, France launches its own grand plan. The Schlieffen offensive is supposed to be a masterpiece of speed and precision. But Joffre's Plan 17, that's all fire and emotion. The French armies surge toward Alsace-Lorraine, banners flying, believing they can reclaim the lost provinces by sheer willpower. The offensive spirit conquers all, their manuals insist. Unfortunately, the machine gun disagrees. In the valleys near Mulhouse and Morhange, French infantry charge in bright red trousers, their officers still believing that colorful uniforms inspire bravery. The Germans, entrenched and well supplied with artillery, mow them down by the thousands. Within days, the flower of French youth lies scattered across meadows they barely crossed. One quirky footnote: soldiers still carry blue-coated drummers at the front of columns, keeping rhythm with rolls meant for Napoleonic warfare. Some historians think the French army's fixation on glory blinded them. Others argue it was morale, symbolic defiance in a grim age. Either way, the drums fall silent quickly. Still, Joffre does not panic. His face, carved from granite, shows nothing. When an entire army collapses, he replaces its commander before breakfast. He trusts in discipline and the railways. Every retreat, to him, is a chance to realign. The British, meanwhile, are learning just how serious this war is. At Mons, the BEF meets the Germans head-on for the first time. The professional British riflemen, Veterans of colonial wars fire so rapidly that the Germans mistake their volleys for machine guns. But the numbers are impossible. 4 German corps against 2 British. The line buckles. The retreat begins. Imagine the exhaustion. Marching 20 miles a day in August heat, sleeping by roadsides, fighting skirmishes at dawn. Yet discipline holds. The British and French fall back in good order, though every day feels like a losing battle. Parisians begin to whisper that the war is already lost. The Schlieffen Plan, however, is beginning to wobble under its own weight. Each victory stretches the German line thinner. Their cavalry patrols range too far ahead. Supply trains lag behind. In Belgium, smashed railways slow everything to a crawl. The plan depends on perfect timing, but Europe is not a clock. The German High Command, led by Helmuth von Moltke the Younger, operates from far away in Luxembourg. He's no field general like his famous uncle, the elder Moltke of the Franco-Prussian War. This one is anxious, uncertain. Reports from the front come late or incomplete. Armies drift off course. Coordination frays. Von Kluck, commanding the crucial First Army, becomes the wild card. He's bold, impatient, and convinced the French are broken. Instead of sweeping west of Paris as planned, he decides to turn east of the city, directly toward the retreating French armies. His logic? Finish the job quickly. The flaw? By turning east, he exposes his flank to the French forces still forming around Paris. It's a small decision with massive consequences, the kind of butterfly flap that changes history. Back in Paris, Gallieni watches these developments with hawk-like attention. His city hums with nervous energy. Refugees pour in, but so do soldiers. Railway yards fill with troop trains, and every telegraph office crackles with orders. The Eiffel Tower, barely 15 years old, serves as a radio relay for army communications. It's almost poetic, the symbol of modernity, now part of the war machine. One evening, Gallieni climbs to a lookout tower north of the city. He can see the faint flicker of artillery to the horizon, the German front only 13 kilometers away. A staff officer asks whether Paris will be surrendered if the Germans reach the Seine. Gallieni doesn't even blink. We will fight here. The truth is, the Germans are tired. Their soldiers march 30 miles a day. Boots disintegrate, horses die in ditches, and food convoys struggle to keep pace. One battalion writes home, "We have eaten nothing warm in 5 days." Yet still they advance, pulled forward by momentum and belief. Then comes a small, almost absurd twist of fate. A map found on a dead German officer. French troops near the Marne recover it and realize von Kluck has turned east instead of circling west of Paris. The French now know exactly where his flank lies, and Gallieni, that stubborn old colonel with a taste for improvisation, sees his chance. He telephones Joffre. "I am going to attack the enemy's flank." Joffre hesitates. The timing isn't perfect. Reinforcements aren't fully ready. Gallieni replies simply, "Then I shall act on my own responsibility." That sentence, quiet, defiant, might just save France. In the cafes of Bordeaux, ministers already discuss evacuation. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm receives reports that his armies are days from victory. German soldiers write, "To Paris," on their packs. But beneath the confidence, the machine is rattling. Communication between the First and Second Armies breaks down. Supply columns run out of coal, and field telephones go dead in the rain. Historians still debate whether the Schlieffen Plan could have succeeded with better logistics, or whether it was doomed from the moment the first boot crossed Belgium. What's certain is that the elegant clockwork has become a tangle of mud, hunger, and exhaustion. By the end of August, the German army has advanced farther, faster than any army in modern history. Yet it is stretched to the breaking point, and somewhere beyond the horizon, a weary French general and a bespectacled governor are about to pull the emergency brake on the whole thing. You exhale, feeling the air thicken as September 1914 approaches. The lights of Paris flicker in the distance, still free, for now. The clock ticks toward the first great turning point of the 20th century. You wake to the rattle of distant gunfire and the low hum of trains. France is striking back. It's mid-August 1914, and General Joseph Joffre, calm as ever, has decided that the best defense is a furious offense. His grand design, Plan 17, has been in motion for days. A series of French thrusts into Alsace-Lorraine, the provinces lost to Germany 43 years earlier. Every French schoolchild had grown up staring at classroom maps shaded with bitter red lines around those provinces. Every soldier now marching east believes he's on a crusade to redeem them. You picture it. Morning mist over the Vosges Mountains, bugles echoing down valleys, columns of men in red trousers and blue coats marching toward the unseen enemy. It's beautiful, almost painterly, until the shells begin to fall. The first engagements go badly. The Germans, fighting defensively on their own prepared ground, unleash heavy artillery that the French simply don't have. Shrapnel bursts above the attacking infantry, turning proud regiments into tangled heaps within minutes. The doctrine of offensive à outrance, attack to the limit, drives French commanders to order charge after charge. The result is the same every time. Valor meets velocity, and velocity wins. Historians still argue whether this blind faith in aggression was bravery or folly. Some say Joffre had no choice. France needed to show its spirit after decades of humiliation. Others insist the generals were drunk on 19th century romanticism, trying to fight in 1914 with 1870s ideas. By 20th August, the offensives into Alsace and Lorraine have collapsed. Entire divisions fall back in disarray, their officers stunned that courage alone can't stop artillery. Casualties mount so quickly that field hospitals overflow. One medic writes, "We stopped counting wounds and started counting limbs." Still, Plan 17 isn't over. Joffre orders new attacks further north into Belgium, where he hopes to link with the British Expeditionary Force. But the Germans have already poured through that very region in overwhelming strength. When the French collide with them near Charleroi, they face not only rifles and machine guns, but a wall of organized precision, the mechanical power of modern warfare. You stand with the French Fifth Army near the River Sambre. The air smells of smoke and cordite. Orders come down to retake the bridges, and men rush forward under a hail of bullets. By nightfall, the river runs dark and thick. The Fifth Army breaks. To the north, the British at Mons are barely holding on. To the south, another French army reels from defeat in the Ardennes. The entire Allied front begins to buckle. Amid the chaos, snippets of human absurdity survive. In one village, a French colonel insists on having his lunch laid properly under fire. Silver cutlery, linen napkin, the works. He's killed mid-bite by a shell. Nearby, a group of priests bless soldiers as they charge, only to end up using the same holy water on the wounded minutes later. Even tragedy can't suppress a kind of grim theater. The retreat that follows, the Great Retreat, stretches across northern France like a slow-motion avalanche. Joffre orders his armies to fall back methodically toward the Marne River, regroup, and wait for the right moment to strike. "I do not retreat," he tells one subordinate. "I merely advance in another direction." It's the kind of line that sounds clever only if you're not marching 20 miles a day in August heat. You travel with one such column. Tens of thousands of men trudging along dusty roads, boots coated in chalky white. Artillery limbers creak, horses stumble. The smell of sweat and unwashed wool thickens by the hour. Somewhere overhead, German Zeppelins drift, scouting for targets. Refugees clog the same roads, carts stacked with mattresses, chickens, and terrified children. Yet, despite exhaustion, discipline holds. Soldiers still salute passing officers. Bands still play when they can. Every few miles, a rear guard turns and fights, delaying the Germans at a crossroads or a bridge. These small stands, insignificant on maps, buy the time that Joffre desperately needs. In Paris, the news filters in like smoke through cracks. First, the enemy approaches the frontier. Then, the enemy crosses the frontier. And finally, the enemy nears the capital. The government begins to evacuate. The Bank of France's gold reserves are loaded onto trains bound for Bordeaux. Museums pack their treasures. The Mona Lisa makes her own quiet journey south. For civilians, the war that had seemed far away now whispers at the gates. But amid panic, Joseph Gallieni remains composed. He uses the city's rail system like a weapon. Trains roar in and out of the Gare de l'Est, carrying troops, artillery, and ammunition. He requisitions buses, horses, even delivery wagons. The hum of Paris becomes logistical music, the rhythm of a city turning itself into a fortress. He's also clever with morale. Posters appear overnight. On ne passe pas. They shall not pass. Cafes offer free coffee to soldiers. School children write letters to our brave defenders. It's part theater, part therapy, but it works. Paris begins to believe in itself again. Meanwhile, German generals congratulate themselves. They've won every battle so far. Paris seems inevitable. Von Kluck's First Army and von Bülow's Second drive south, pressing the retreating allies before them. They're confident the French are finished, the British irrelevant, and the Schlieffen Plan unstoppable. But cracks are forming. Every mile stretched southward lengthens supply lines, and the German rail network can't keep up. Belgian saboteurs destroy bridges. French cavalry raids capture supply convoys. Soldiers run low on food and ammunition. Even the horses are starving. One German diary notes, "We eat what they eat now. Grass." At headquarters in Luxembourg, Moltke the Younger begins to unravel. He sends anxious telegrams asking for updates that never arrive. Commanders in the field interpret orders differently. The once precise German advance becomes a series of overlapping improvisations, and still, von Kluck drives on. "Paris!" his men shout as they march, the word itself a promise. When scouts report French forces reforming near the Marne, he dismisses it. "They are beaten men," he says. He will soon regret those words. In one rare moment of levity, a group of German soldiers capture a French bakery and spend a night baking loaves for their regiment. The smell of fresh bread drifts across the fields, an almost absurd reminder that life goes on, even in the middle of madness. It's a fragile peace before the storm. Back in Paris, Gallieni receives reports that von Kluck is no longer swinging west of the city, but moving east of it, straight past Paris's northern flank. It's an unexpected move, and it leaves a dangerous gap between von Kluck's First Army and von Bülow's Second. Gallieni studies the map for a long moment, then murmurs, "Gentlemen, they offer us their flank." He immediately begins forming plans for a counterattack. His call to Joffre that night is terse but electric. The French High Command realizes they've been gifted an opportunity, perhaps the only one they'll get. A new army, the 6th, freshly assembled from Paris garrisons and transported by rail, will strike the exposed German side. The stage is set. On one side, exhausted German soldiers marching toward a city they can almost smell. On the other, a battered but unbroken France, gathering her strength for one last stand. No one knows it yet, but the coming clash along the river Marne will decide not just the fate of Paris, but the fate of Europe. You lean back, listening to the distant roll of thunder that isn't thunder at all. It's the rumble of guns, growing louder each hour. In a few days, the world will learn what happens when a plan built on speed collides with a nation's refusal to fall. You can almost smell the sweat and cordite of late August 1914 as the Battle of the Frontiers rages across a jagged line from Belgium to the Vosges. Imagine it, 2 million soldiers colliding across 400 kilometers of countryside, horses screaming, bugles blaring, and the skies trembling under the percussion of modern artillery. It is, in every sense, the largest battle the world has ever seen. And yet, beneath the thunder and chaos, there's something almost tragic about it. The soldiers of Europe march into this storm believing it will be over by Christmas. They expect parades, not annihilation. You find yourself amid a French regiment near Charleroi, the air sticky with smoke. The men wear those infamous red trousers and blue tunics because, as one French politician had said just before the war, red trousers are France. No camouflage, no subtlety, just defiance stitched in scarlet. It looks heroic from afar, suicidal up close. When German artillery opens up, the ground churns like boiling water. Men vanish mid-sentence. Officers stand tall to inspire their troops, and within seconds are shredded by shrapnel. The old Napoleonic ideal of courage collapses before the new arithmetic of the machine gun. A corporal beside you mutters, "It's like fighting God himself." By the time night falls, the French line has disintegrated. Joffrey's carefully arranged Plan 17 dissolves into scattered corps retreating in different directions. Historians still argue whether his vision of offensive à outrance, the cult of attack, was idealism or insanity. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. He had trusted the soul of France more than its weapons. Meanwhile, the Germans, advancing through Belgium, are discovering their own kind of nightmare. The further they push, the more their supply lines stretch thin. Horses collapse under loads of ammunition. Wagon wheels snap on cratered roads. In burned-out villages, terrified civilians flee before gray columns that seem endless. In one grim episode, the ancient university town of Louvain is reduced to rubble. Fires consume libraries, cathedrals, and homes alike. The destruction becomes a symbol of German brutality, plastered across Allied newspapers. The Kaiser's soldiers, who had been raised on discipline and order, suddenly find themselves cast as villains in a moral crusade. For all its power, the German army is not invincible. In places, it grinds forward not with glory but exhaustion. Their uniforms, once crisp, are now caked with mud and blood. Each step south takes them farther from their railheads, deeper into a hostile country. Back on the French side, Joffre moves like a man possessed. He travels the front in a black limousine, inspecting divisions, sacking generals without hesitation. At one point, he replaces 3 corps commanders in a single day. His face never changes, his manner is serene. Behind the calm lies cold calculation, a recognition that France can still fight if only it can buy time. That time comes courtesy of the British Expeditionary Force. At the town of Mons, the BEF stands its ground against overwhelming odds. British soldiers, trained to fire 15 aim shots per minute, cut down wave after wave of advancing Germans. The survivors swear they were facing machine guns. It's a fleeting victory, but a moral one. After Mons, the retreat begins. The BEF falls back toward Le Cateau, Saint-Quentin, and eventually the Marne, fighting delaying actions all the way. Roads jam with refugees, wagons, and marching columns. The dust clogs your lungs. The air tastes of iron and despair. Somewhere near Mézières, the British and French lines cross paths. 2 beaten armies that refuse to admit defeat. They trade cigarettes and sarcasm. "We're only advancing backward," one British sergeant quips. Gallows humor becomes the only armor left. It's during this chaotic retreat that a curious truth emerges. France's most effective weapon isn't a rifle or cannon, it's the railway. While the Germans drag their supplies through Belgium, France uses its intact network to shuttle entire armies from east to west in days. Joffrey pulls divisions from Lorraine and deposits them like chess pieces around Paris. In one remarkable week, nearly 250,000 men are redeployed by train. The miracle of industrial warfare is that steel wheels can turn the tide as surely as steel bayonets. By early September, the Allies stand again, battered but unbroken. The French 6th Army, newly formed under General Michel-Joseph Monory, takes position just north of Paris. Its ranks are filled with veterans, reservists, and even colonial troops from North Africa. They are exhausted, but the shadow of the Eiffel Tower is behind them now, and that means something. Within the city, Gallieni orchestrates the defense like a maestro. He requisitions buses, horses, taxis, anything with wheels. Bridges are wired for demolition. Barricades rise at major intersections. He even drafts Boy Scouts to run messages. Paris hums with energy, equal parts fear and defiance. One quirky footnote: the Eiffel Tower, once a mere tourist curiosity, becomes a military asset. Its height makes it a perfect radio antenna, and French signal operators use it to intercept German transmissions. One garbled message, half in cipher, gives Joffrey a clue that the German First Army has turned east, a pivot that exposes its flank to Minori's Sixth Army. It's the kind of intelligence coup that changes wars. A dead German courier confirms it, a folded map showing von Kluck's altered route. When Gallieni sees it, he knows instantly what it means. "Gentlemen," he says, "the Germans are bearing their flank. We must strike." The plan forms quickly. The French Sixth Army will advance northeast from Paris, hitting von Kluck's left side like a hammer. The British, meanwhile, will pivot and push north, exploiting any breach. To the east, Joffrey orders the French 5th and 9th armies to hold the line along the Marne River. It's a massive gamble, the first real Allied counterattack since the war began. If it fails, Paris falls. If it succeeds, Europe changes forever. You picture Gallieni standing on the balcony of his headquarters, listening to the hum of the city below. The faint rumble in the distance could be thunder or artillery. He can't tell anymore. "We will attack tomorrow morning," he says quietly, almost to himself. That night, soldiers sleep in courtyards and railway stations, rifles stacked beside them. Civilians peer from windows as columns of troops march past, bayonets catching the lamplight. Somewhere, a cafe pianist keeps playing even as blackout curtains flutter in the draft. The tune, Debussy's Clair de Lune, floats over a city bracing for destiny. Farther north, von Kluck's men make camp along the Ork River. They are weary, confident, unaware. Their officers toast to Paris within reach. Yet supplies are late again, and the horses look thin. The telephones crackle with static. The lines back to headquarters in Luxembourg have gone quiet. Historians still debate how close Germany truly came to victory. Some say von Kluck could see the glow of Paris on the horizon. Others claim that even then, his army was running on fumes. What everyone agrees on is this: the next few days will decide the fate of the war. In the soft dark before dawn, Minori's men fix bayonets. A bugle sounds, faint, uncertain, then another. The fields around the Ork shimmer with morning mist. Gallieni's gamble is about to begin. The Great War's first true turning point waits in the fog, just beyond the reach of the guns. The morning of September 5th, 1914 dawns gray and wet. Not the thunderclap of a new offensive, but something quieter, more uncertain. You're standing with the men of the French 6th Army under General Michel-Joseph Monori, somewhere northeast of Paris. Mist hangs over the fields near the Ork River, softening the shapes of hedgerows and barns. The air smells of damp straw and coal smoke from the locomotives that brought these soldiers here overnight. The city behind them still buzzes from the noise of evacuation. Wagons creaking, church bells tolling, the whine of sirens. Paris feels like a lung that has stopped breathing, waiting for the next exhale. Ahead lies the sound of heavy boots and distant engines. The Germans are out there, maybe 8 miles away, pushing south toward what they believe is a broken enemy. But this morning, for the first time in weeks, the French are advancing. Minori's men, roughly 150,000 strong, move out at dawn. Some wear new uniforms, still smelling of dye. Others wear patched tunics from the retreat. Many haven't eaten properly in days. Their rifles are cold, their hearts uncertain. Yet as they trudge east, they feel something shift, not in orders or strategy, but in spirit. Paris is behind them. Their families, their history, their pride. That matters. Gallieni has taken a gamble bigger than any single battle. He's committed Paris's defense forces to attack von Kluck's German First Army head-on. not in a desperate stand, but a counterpunch. His reasoning is pure instinct. If von Kluck has turned east of Paris instead of west, then his left flank, his unguarded side, is hanging in the air. Hit it fast enough, hard enough, and the whole German advance might unravel.
It's the kind of idea that would terrify a cautious man. Gallieni is not a cautious man. He spends the morning pacing the map room at his headquarters in the Lycée Carnot, tapping the handle of his cane on the floor. When reports come in that Minory's vanguard is engaging German outposts near Claye-Souilly, he mutters, "Enfin," at last. Then he wires Joffre. "My troops are in contact with the enemy's flank." The battle begins almost by accident. German reconnaissance aircraft spot the French columns forming up, but their reports arrive late. Von Kluck, convinced that Paris poses no real threat, dismisses the warnings. His attention is fixed southward, where he hopes to crush the French Fifth Army and the British near the Marne. So his left flank, a thin screen of 23,000 reservists, faces Minory's 150,000 attackers. At first, the French gain ground easily. Villages like Barcy, Étrepilly, and Chambry fall one after another. The sound of cannon fire rolls westward across the plains, echoing in the outskirts of Paris. Parisians hear it clearly for the first time. Not rumor, not distant thunder, but the real war. Some climb rooftops to watch the horizon flicker. Still, the French advance soon slows. German field artillery, skillfully hidden on high ground, begins to tear into the attacking lines. The French 55th Division loses half its men before noon. One officer notes grimly in his diary, "We took Étrepilly 3 times and lost it 3 times. As the fighting drags on, Gallieni receives anxious calls from Minory. Ammunition is running low. Reserves are thin. The enemy, though surprised, is responding fast. Von Kluck himself rides to the front, reorganizing his battered flank and calling up reinforcements from the south. His counterattack slams into the French line with astonishing force. By evening, the situation teeters. The French have gained little ground at enormous cost. Smoke rises from villages now little more than rubble. The Ourcq River runs red in the fading light. Even Gallieni, pacing his office, begins to doubt. But then something remarkable happens. Something both absurd and brilliant. As darkness falls on September 6th, Gallieni realizes Minory's troops are about to be overrun. Reinforcements are needed immediately, but the railways are jammed and trucks are scarce. His aide suggests using Parisian taxis, the black and red Renault cabs that fill the city's streets. It sounds insane. Gallieni grins. Why not? Within hours, 600 taxis are requisitioned, lined up near the Invalides and Étoile. Each driver receives a paper order from a lieutenant and a single instruction: drive northeast. They rattle through the night in convoys, headlights dimmed, carrying 5 men apiece, rifles between their knees, nervous laughter in the dark. The soldiers nickname them the taxis of the Marne. The gesture makes little tactical difference. Only a few thousand troops arrive at the front, but psychologically, it's enormous. The sight of civilian drivers calmly ferrying soldiers toward the guns electrifies the French press and public. For the first time since August, the people of Paris believe victory is possible. "Paris saved by her taxis," one newspaper headlines the next morning. It's not entirely true, but truth bends easily under hope. On the battlefield, the fight along the Ourcq intensifies. German artillery tears holes through hedges and haystacks. French batteries reply from behind farm walls. The landscape becomes unrecognizable. Fields cratered, villages flattened, orchards shredded. At one point, French Moroccan colonial troops charge across open ground in bright blue cloaks, shouting Allah Akbar. They seize a hill, but lose 85% of their number in minutes. Their bravery becomes legendary. Even von Kluck's men, grim and efficient, are shaken by the ferocity. By September 7th, the battle expands. Joffre has launched a general counteroffensive along a front of 160 miles. From Paris in the west to Verdun in the east, over 2 million men are now engaged. It's no longer a single clash.
It's an earthquake. Machine gun nests carve lanes through advancing infantry. Horse cavalry charges vanish under storms of shrapnel. Generals, still clinging to pre-war ideals of gallantry, ride forward on horseback and are instantly mown down. The air buzzes with the whine of early aircraft, primitive but daring. Pilots wave at each other before dropping bombs the size of milk cans. One small anecdote from this chaotic week. A German battalion, cut off and out of ammunition, waves a white flag. The French, enraged by weeks of losses, fire anyway. When the smoke clears, 450 Germans lie dead. Historians still debate whether it was deliberate vengeance or a tragic misunderstanding. Either way, it shows how far the war has fallen from its opening illusions of chivalry. Meanwhile, at German headquarters in Luxembourg, Helmuth von Moltke grows increasingly frantic. His telegraph reports are contradictory. Field officers send pleas for clarity that go unanswered. He's too far from the front to sense its collapse, but close enough to feel panic gnawing at the edges. The situation is serious, he confides to an aide. Perhaps very serious. In the field, von Kluck's confidence begins to crack. His left flank, already mauled by Minori, now faces pressure from the British Expeditionary Force, advancing north into the widening gap between his army and von Bülow's. That gap, about 30 miles wide, becomes the soft spot in the German line. Still, the fighting grinds on. For every German regiment that breaks, another stands firm. For every French advance, there's a counter-barrage. The soil of the Marne Valley turns to liquid clay, churned by boots and shells. At night, soldiers dig shallow pits for cover. The first real trenches of the Western Front. They're not yet the labyrinths of later years, just rough scrapes in the earth. But already, a new kind of warfare is taking shape. The men don't know it yet, but the age of movement is ending. The age of entrenchment is beginning. As you watch from the edge of this chaos, one thought keeps repeating. This was supposed to be quick. 42 days. That was the promise. But time, like terrain, has turned against everyone. By September 8th, both sides are nearing exhaustion. Minori's 6th Army clings to its positions along the Ourcq. The BEF holds its ground near Montmirail, while the French 5th Army, under Franchet d'Espèrey, presses eastward. Somewhere between the lines, thousands lie wounded, listening to the endless cannonade and wondering which side is winning. And in the quiet offices of Luxembourg, von Moltke writes a final order. Not of triumph, but that's still a day away. For now, under the smoky sky of the Marne, the fate of Paris hangs by a thread, stretched taut between courage and chaos. The second week of September 1914 unfolds in chaos, mud, smoke, and the relentless pounding of artillery. You stand among Minori's exhausted soldiers near the Ourcq River, the thin line between the Germans and Paris. The men haven't slept properly in days. They fight, collapse, and fight again. Behind them, the bells of the capital toll faintly through the night air, as if the city itself is praying. The first day's counterattack has stalled. By now, the French 6th Army is stretched thin, its commanders desperate for ammunition and reinforcements. Gallieni, pacing in his office, studies the telegraph reports. Fighting very severe, losses heavy, morale steady. It's hardly comforting, but he refuses to yield. You picture him, the 70-year-old general, upright in his immaculate uniform, monocle glinting under the gaslight. He may look like an administrator, but he's every inch a soldier. Paris must not fall, he says to an aide. If the army cannot save it, the city itself will. That evening, he sends a new order. The entire Paris garrison, clerks, reservists, even engineers, will march to reinforce the front. The taxis continue their nocturnal journeys, headlights flickering through the mist. It's a sight both absurd and beautiful. Ordinary civilians carrying the defense of civilization on 4 rubber tires. The soldiers they deliver pile straight into the firing line. Villages like Barcy, Étrepilly, and Marcilly change hands 3 or 4 times in a single day. Machine guns chatter from haylofts. Snipers trade shots from church towers. and artillery duels tear apart orchards thick with unharvested apples. You pause to imagine the soundscape, the roar of guns rolling across open plains, punctuated by the whinny of terrified horses, the crash of collapsing walls, and the occasional haunting silence when both sides run out of shells. In one such lull, a French infantryman named Jean Turmel scribbles a line in his notebook. "We fight not for ground, but for breath. Each breath a defiance." Historians still debate how close von Kluck came to breaking through. Some claim his men glimpsed the spires of Paris through the haze. Others insist his momentum was already fading. What's certain is that Gallieni's gamble forced him to pivot, to turn his mighty First Army northwest to deal with the threat. That turn, those few degrees of direction, will prove fatal to the German plan. Because while von Kluck fights Minori tooth and nail on the Ourcq, a much larger danger brews to his right. The gap between the German First and Second Armies, already 30 miles wide, is widening with every hour. Further south, Joffre recognizes this opportunity with surgical calm. He orders the French Fifth Army under Franchet d'Espèrey and the British Expeditionary Force under Sir John French to advance into the breach. It's risky. Both armies are exhausted, but if they succeed, they could slice the German front in two. The night before the push, Joffre sends out his famous proclamation. At the moment when a battle upon which the fate of the country depends is about to begin, every man must understand that now is not the time to look back. All must fight to the end and die where they stand rather than give way. You can almost hear his gravelly voice reciting it to rows of weary officers, their faces lit by lantern light. The next morning, September 7th, dawns clear and cold. The French Fifth Army and BEF surge forward. The fields tremble beneath their boots. Bayonets glint under a rising sun streaked with smoke. Meanwhile, back on the Ourcq, Monuri's Sixth Army fights like a trapped animal. The Germans launch furious counterattacks, storming the villages the French took at such cost. Casualties on both sides are horrific. One French battalion reports only 73 survivors out of 800. A German regiment loses nearly the same. A German lieutenant writes in his journal, "We advance knee-deep in corpses. The air tastes of iron and ash." Yet, despite everything, the French hold. Every hour they delay von Kluck, they widen the opening for the British and Franchet d'Espèrey. In Paris, Gallieni receives the latest dispatches. The situation is precarious, but the tone of the reports is changing. Fewer words like retreat, more like resist and advance. He allows himself a rare smile. "Gentlemen," he says, "we are not defeated." That same day, French reconnaissance aircraft, those fragile, canvas-winged pioneers, spot something extraordinary. German columns marching north, away from Paris, toward the Ourcq. It's confirmation that von Kluck is redeploying his main strength against Monuri, leaving the flank of the German Second Army exposed. Gallieni sends the message to Joffre immediately. It's the signal the French commander-in-chief has been waiting for. Within hours, he orders a general offensive along the entire front. The battle now expands into something vast and incomprehensible, an industrial hurricane stretching from the Seine to Verdun. Over 2 million men, 1 million shells a day, and every ounce of human willpower Europe can muster. But for all the grandeur of strategy, the individual experience remains small and brutal. You see it in a gun crew huddled around their 75mm field piece, hands blistered, faces black with powder. You hear it in the shouted order, "Feu rapide," rapid fire, and the deafening crack as shell after shell arcs toward the unseen enemy. The French 75, light and quick, becomes the soul of this battle. Soldiers worship it for its accuracy and speed. Its rhythmic bark feels almost like breathing, steady, defiant. A quirky footnote: the gun's recoil system is so advanced that when the US enters the war years later, they'll copy it, almost bolt for bolt. For now, though, it's the miracle keeping the Germans at bay.
The Germans respond with their Maxim machine guns, their howitzers, their discipline. They dig in, improvise trenches, use the terrain. The Orc Valley turns into a cauldron. And yet, despite everything, something intangible shifts. The French no longer fight to delay, they fight to drive back. Even in the worst moments, a strange calm settles over them. They have found a rhythm in resistance. Officers stop talking about days and start talking about holding until the night, or holding until the next regiment arrives. By the end of September 7th, the German assault has lost its sting. Von Kluck's forces, exhausted from 2 weeks of near-continuous marching and fighting, begin to falter. Ammunition runs low. Supply convoys lag miles behind. Soldiers sleep standing up, leaning against the guns they no longer have shells for. At 9 p.m., in a battered farmhouse near Nanteuil, von Kluck meets with his staff. They argue whether to continue the offensive or pull back to more defensible positions. No one can agree. Finally, von Kluck mutters, "We are at the limit." That phrase, simple, weary, almost resigned, marks the beginning of the end. The next day, as the BEF and French Fifth Army press into the widening gap, von Bülow's Second Army feels its right flank exposed. Messages fly in every direction, many lost in the confusion. Von Bülow demands von Kluck retreat. Von Kluck refuses. Neither knows that Moltke, far away in Luxembourg, is already sending emissaries to reassert control. In truth, there is no control left. The Schleifen plan, the perfect clockwork vision of swift victory, is now a pile of bent gears and broken springs. And in Paris, Joseph Gallieni stands by his window at dusk, watching the horizon flicker with artillery flashes. Behind him, an aide whispers, "The guns seem closer tonight." Gallieni doesn't answer. He knows what those flashes mean. They mean the city has survived another day. He pours himself a small glass of cognac and murmurs, almost to the night air, "So long as they fight, Paris lives." You can almost see him silhouetted against the golden lamplight. An old man standing between civilization and collapse, steady as the Eiffel Tower's iron bones. Tomorrow, the tide will finally turn. But tonight, the war pauses, just for a breath. Morning of September 8th, 1914. Fog over the Marne. The smell of wet gunpowder and trampled grass. The world feels damp and bruised. You stand among the scattered remnants of Minory's 6th Army, your boots sinking into the churned mud near the Orc River. To your right, a wagon burns quietly, its wheels slowly collapsing inward like a dying animal. Somewhere behind you, a priest murmurs the Lord's Prayer over a wounded corporal. This is not the victory Gallieni dreamed of. Not yet. The French line holds, but just barely. They've spent 4 days hammering against von Kluck's flank, and the Germans have answered with relentless counterfire. You can feel it in the ground beneath your feet, the dull, constant percussion of shells landing somewhere too close to ignore. And yet, something is changing. The German advance, that unstoppable gray tide of August, has slowed. Von Kluck's army, after weeks of marching and fighting, has overextended itself. His right wing is tangled around the Orc, his center pushing south toward the Marne, his supply columns lagging dozens of miles behind. The pristine lines of the Schlieffen plan are gone. Instead of precision, there's chaos. Battalions fighting in isolation, divisions lost in the fog, orders arriving hours too late. At his forward headquarters, von Kluck paces like a man trapped in his own ambition. "Paris is at our backs," he snaps. "We should be inside it by now." His staff exchange uneasy glances. They all know that if they turn west again to attack the capital, they'll expose their right flank even further. But if they don't, they'll lose the initiative. The German plan, that flawless domino of timing, depends on momentum. Lose that, and the whole structure collapses. Meanwhile, Helmuth von Moltke, the German chief of staff, sits 200 kilometers away in Luxembourg, half paralyzed by uncertainty. The telegraph brings him fragmented reports. Kluck advancing successfully. Bülow under pressure. Paris not yet taken. He can't see the battlefield, and he doesn't trust his subordinates to tell him the truth. One aide later recalls finding him staring at a wall map in silence for 20 minutes, tracing circles with his finger as if trying to summon control from geometry. Historians still argue whether Moltke ever truly commanded the Marne battle at all. Some claim he had already lost control by the first week of September. Others think he simply didn't believe what his own scouts were telling him. Either way, his armies are now fighting as separate, uncoordinated beasts, each powerful but blind. By contrast, the French have found their rhythm. Joffre, whose calm has bordered on eerie since August, finally senses victory within reach. His headquarters, once tense and chaotic, hums with quiet focus. He moves pins across his map like a surgeon manipulating instruments. "We have them," he says simply. That afternoon, Gallieni receives an urgent report from the front. French air reconnaissance has confirmed a 30-mile gap between von Kluck's First Army and von Bülow's Second. The aerial observers, flying in fragile biplanes patched with canvas, have risked gunfire and high winds to sketch the position of German columns below. Their maps show it clearly: a breach, an open wound in the enemy's line. Gallieni sends a courier racing to Joffre. The enemy's flank is uncovered. The message reaches Joffre's headquarters by nightfall. He reads it slowly, then looks up at his staff. "C'est maintenant," he says. "It is time." Orders ripple down the chain. At dawn, the British Expeditionary Force and the French Fifth Army will advance into the gap, driving a wedge between the two German forces. It's an enormous gamble, but if it succeeds, it could trap von Kluck's and von Bülow's armies in a pincer, the kind of reversal that generals dream of and historians later call destiny. You can almost feel the pulse of the decision spreading across the front. In muddy bivouacs and ruined barns, soldiers are shaken awake, told to prepare for a dawn offensive. Some groan, others grin wearily. "Maybe now we'll push them back," one private mutters. His sergeant replies, "Or they'll bury us where we stand." In Paris, Gallieni barely sleeps. He paces until dawn, waiting for word. The city outside is eerily calm. Gas lamps flickering along empty boulevards. Stray cats prowling among sandbags piled around monuments. Somewhere in Montmartre, a cafe pianist plays La Vie en Rose for an audience of two waitresses and a dog. The war for a moment feels distant again. But when dawn breaks, the sound of gunfire rolls across the city like thunder over rooftops. The Battle of the Marne has entered its final act. To the south, the British move first. Sir John French, their commander, has spent the last few days sulking, furious at Joffre for what he sees as reckless orders. The BEF's early battles had been costly, and morale was low. But now, with the Germans overextended, the opportunity is too obvious to ignore. The British advance with grim determination. In villages like La Ferté-sous-Jouarre and Colomiers, they find abandoned German camps, half-eaten rations, empty shell crates, broken wagons. The realization spreads through the ranks like electricity. The Germans are falling back. Meanwhile, von Bülow, commanding the German Second Army, realizes the disaster forming to his right. His flank is exposed, his communications with von Kluck disintegrating. He sends desperate messages northward. First Army must fall back immediately. But the lines are cut, the couriers intercepted, and von Kluck, always a man of pride, ignores what little warning reaches him. The French Fifth Army, pressing hard, forces crossings over the Petit Morin River, while the BEF drives into the open countryside north of Montmirail. The gap widens to 40 miles. German divisions that had once marched in perfect order now stumble back in confusion. The turning point comes late on September 8th, when von Kluck learns that French troops have reached Monceau, dangerously close to cutting off his supply line. Furious, he orders a full retreat to the Aisne River, but it's too late to do it cleanly. His troops pull out piecemeal under fire, abandoning guns and ammunition to keep their mobility. On the Ourcq, Minory's 6th Army, seeing the Germans pulling back, renews its attack with what strength remains. The French drag field guns forward by hand, men sinking to their knees from exhaustion. The battle dissolves into chaos, stray units firing through fog at shapes they can barely see. In one bizarre episode, a group of German cavalry rides straight into a French field hospital, realizes their mistake, and retreats after politely apologizing. Even in war, etiquette dies hard. By the evening of September 9th, von Kluck's army is in full retreat. The French chase them across the open fields, singing La Marseillaise through cracked lips. Behind them, Gallieni receives the telegram he's been waiting for. Enemy in retreat along the entire front. He leans back, removes his spectacles, and says simply, "Paris is saved." But victory, as always, comes wrapped in grief. The Marne has cost nearly 500,000 casualties on both sides, a scale of loss Europe has never seen. Villages are gone, fields churned into wasteland, rivers thick with debris and blood. The dead lie where they fell, unburied for days. A British officer writes home, "We have held the line, but God help us, at what price?" Even Joffrey, normally stoic, visits the front and walks silently among the wreckage. When a colonel apologizes for his regiment's losses, Joffrey places a hand on his shoulder. "We have done what we had to do," he says. Behind him, the horizon glows red from burning farms. The war has changed shape. No longer a sprint, but a siege. The German armies dig in north of the Aisne, fortifying the high ground. The Allies, too weak to pursue, entrench opposite them. The movement that began in August, all speed and ambition, has ended in mud and wire. Somewhere near Reims, a young German private writes home, "We are told this is only the beginning. I do not believe them. Nothing can go on like this." But he is wrong. The world has just entered its longest night. The morning after the German retreat begins, the battlefield of the Marne is eerily quiet. The guns that had thundered for a week have fallen still, replaced by a dull hum. Flies, distant trains, the slow groan of carts hauling the wounded. You walk among the ruins of Étrepilly and Barcy, places that no longer resemble villages at all. Chimneys stand alone where houses were. Horses lie stiff beside shattered guns. Somewhere, a broken church bell rings without rhythm, its tower half gone. For France, it feels like waking from a nightmare and realizing you're still inside it. The German 1st and 2nd Armies, bloodied and confused, are pulling north toward the Aisne River, trying to find solid ground to regroup. The retreat isn't a rout, not yet. The soldiers are disciplined, their officers efficient, but the look in their eyes has changed. They're no longer marching toward glory. They're marching away from disaster. Von Kluck, the man who had nearly taken Paris, rides at the head of his battered column. His face is gray with dust and sleeplessness. When a staff officer remarks that the men still seem in good spirits, von Kluck replies, "They are good soldiers, but the plan is broken." Behind him, a trail of wagons clatters northward, packed with wounded, half-buried artillery, and hastily bundled documents. The Schlieffen Plan, that immaculate vision of a quick, decisive war, has failed in just over a month. Historians still argue why. Was it logistics, leadership, or the simple, brutal friction of reality grinding against theory? Whatever the cause, the result is irreversible. Germany has lost its chance to end the war in a single stroke. Meanwhile, the Allies stumble forward in pursuit, too exhausted to realize how close they are to collapse themselves. The French 6th Army, its ranks shredded, advances only a few miles each day. Soldiers drink from muddy streams, sleep in shell holes, and march on blistered feet. The British Expeditionary Force fares little better, its numbers so depleted that units must merge just to stay functional. Still, the sense of relief is enormous. For the first time since August, Paris is safe. Gallieni, pale and hollow-eyed, stands on the steps of his headquarters and watches a column of wounded men limp through the gates. They cheer him weakly
and he removes his hat in salute. "They have done their duty," he says softly. That same day, a strange sight appears on the city streets. Children, running, laughing, waving small flags. After weeks of terror, joy feels almost unreal. The newspapers declare the miracle of the Marne. The headline sells hope. France is saved. In truth, the miracle is human, not divine. It's the sum of thousands of decisions made by exhausted officers, stubborn soldiers, and a bespectacled old governor who refused to surrender his city. Still, even as celebration sweeps Paris, the generals know the fight isn't over. The Germans aren't destroyed, merely displaced. The retreat halts along the Aisne, where von Kluck and von Bülow dig in on the ridges above the river. When French and British troops attempt to pursue, they're met by entrenched machine guns and heavy artillery. The open war of movement ends abruptly in a wall of dirt and wire. This is where the Western Front freezes. You stand on a ridge overlooking the Aisne Valley, watching men with shovels carve the first proper trenches of the war. At first, no one intends them to last. They're meant as temporary cover, a place to rest before the next advance. But days pass, then weeks, and the trenches deepen. Soldiers add firing steps, sandbag walls, and dugouts. Soon the lines stretch from Switzerland to the Channel, a scar across Europe. The war that began with speed and ambition now settles into endurance. In Luxembourg, Helmuth von Moltke the Younger sits in silence, his staff afraid to speak. When the first reports of the retreat reach him, he grows pale and whispers, "We have lost the war." He's wrong, of course. The war will grind on for 4 more years, but he senses what others don't yet, that Germany has missed its only real chance for victory. Within weeks, he will be relieved of command. The great strategist of the Schlieffen Plan dies in obscurity 2 years later, convinced his failure doomed the empire. Historians still debate whether Moltke's despair was justified. Some say his strategy was sound, undone only by bad luck. Others argue that the very premise, a lightning war through Belgium, was doomed from the start. What no one disputes is that the Marne shattered Europe's illusions. The romantic vision of gallant cavalry charges and quick victories evaporated. In its place came the reality of industrial war. Trenches, gas, barbed wire, and endless attrition. Among the soldiers, humor becomes their last defense. British troops call their trenches hotels and name them after home. Piccadilly, Trafalgar, Liverpool. French units nickname theirs La Tranchée de la Soif, the thirsty trench. Germans build wooden signs reading Willkommen in der Hölle, welcome to hell. Even as the front solidifies, life creeps back into the ruins. In the battered fields of the Marne, peasants return to gather what's left of the harvest. Children chase stray chickens between shell holes. A farmer finds a rusted helmet and turns it into a flower pot. The war has already begun to seep into the soil, a new layer of history beneath the plow. In Paris, Gallieni becomes a national hero. His calm defiance, the taxis, the miracle, they all turn him into a symbol of resilience. Crowds cheer when he appears at military parades, but privately, he knows the cost. They will praise us now, he says, but they will curse us when they see how long this war will be. He's right. The Marne is both a salvation and a sentence. France has survived, but at the price of years more blood. The Germans, denied a quick win, now settle in for siege warfare. Both sides begin to industrialize their killing. Mass shells, poison gas, machine gun belts by the mile. The optimism of August dies here, in the mud of the Marne. Still, even in defeat, the Germans remain formidable. Their engineers fortify the Aisne Heights, transforming the chalk ridges into fortresses. When the Allies attack again in mid-September, they're repelled with devastating losses. The British lose nearly 13,000 men in a single day trying to cross the river. One lieutenant writes, "We are learning that courage is not enough. Courage gets you killed." By the end of September, the front stabilizes completely. Both sides, now unwilling to withdraw, begin extending their trenches northward in an attempt to outflank the other. This futile dance, the race to the sea, will stretch the line all the way to Flanders, where the first true stalemate of modern history takes root. The men who fought the Marne never forget it. Many will fight on for years, through Verdun, the Somme, Passchendaele, but they will always remember those September days when the war still felt uncertain, when one more march, one more counterattack, might have ended it. For some, it was the last time they believed in victory at all. In one Paris cafe, a veteran of the Marne sits years later, stirring his coffee as he listens to students argue about glory and patriotism. He smiles faintly and says, "The Marne was not a miracle. It was exhaustion, theirs and ours." He's not wrong. In saving France, the Marne condemned the world to 4 more years of trench lines and stalemate, of barbed wire under moonlight, and men vanishing into smoke. And yet, beneath the horror, there's still something miraculous about it. Not divine intervention, but human resilience. Against every calculation, every mechanical certainty of the Schlieffen Plan, the people of France, the soldiers, the taxi drivers, even the terrified refugees on the roads, found the strength to stop the impossible. The Marne didn't just save Paris. It proved that history's outcomes aren't written by maps or plans or timetables, but by will. And somewhere on that misty battlefield, where the first trenches now snake across the fields, a French soldier scratches a line into his rifle butt. "Here, we stopped them." He has no idea the world he's just entered, one that will stretch from this riverbank to Verdun, to Flanders, to an armistice 4 years and 10 million deaths away. But for now, under the pale September sky, that one sentence feels like victory enough. The wind over the Marne carries a new sound now, the scrape of shovels instead of bugles, the hammering of picks where once cannons roared. It's mid-September 1914, and what began as a battle of movement has curdled into a grim stillness. You stand on a slope above the Aisne River, watching French infantry dig into the white chalk. They dig because there's nothing else to do. The Germans sit on the ridges opposite, entrenching too, each side waiting for the other to blink. But rewind just a few days and you're back in the chaos of the German withdrawal from the Marne. Columns of gray uniforms snake north through the valleys, boots squelching in mud, wagons creaking under the weight of the wounded. Von Kluck's First Army, which once boasted of marching down the Champs-Élysées, now fights only to keep order. The soldiers still sing marching songs, habit, not joy, and their commanders whisper the words they never thought they'd use: Rückzug, retreat. Von Kluck himself rides in silence, the wind tugging at his greatcoat. He knows he's lost not only the battle, but perhaps the entire strategy of the war. His aides talk of reorganizing, of counterattacks once the supply lines are restored. He says nothing. Historians still argue about him. Some call him reckless, others a tragic genius sabotaged by Moltke's indecision. What's certain is that his pride led him straight into Gallieni's trap. Behind the retreating Germans, the French Sixth Army limps forward, too battered to chase but unwilling to stop. Gallieni wires Joffre that the enemy is in flight, though he knows it's only half true. The French are almost as exhausted as the Germans. Many soldiers haven't changed socks in a week. Their rifles are clogged with dust. One regiment reports that half its men are fighting barefoot, and yet they advance, as if propelled by disbelief. You pass a crossroads littered with the debris of war, overturned gun carriages, smashed helmets, field kitchens abandoned mid-meal. In one of the cauldrons, the soup is still warm. The air smells of burnt oats and cordite. Then, somewhere north of Chateau Thierry, the first German rearguards turn to fight. Their machine guns, hidden among hedges, rip into the French advance. The old rhythm resumes. Charge, collapse, retreat, dig. Within a day, the lines solidify again. When Joffre visits the front, he senses it immediately, the shift from movement to stagnation. He stands on a ridge overlooking the Aisne and mutters, "We will not push them farther." His staff waits for him to issue new orders, but he simply adjusts his gloves and says, "Then we will hold them here." Thus begins the Battle of the Aisne. Less famous than the Marne, but more prophetic. The Germans occupy the high ground, their trenches connected by communication tunnels and shielded by sandbags. The French and British, in the valley below, try to storm the slopes. It's like attacking a wall of steel. Shells fall in sheets. Entire companies vanish in seconds. A British officer writes, "The enemy's bullets cut the grass shorter than any scythe." For the first time, soldiers begin digging deep, not just for cover, but for survival. The trench, once a temporary expedient, becomes the new home of the Western Front. Imagine it from the inside. Narrow, wet, reeking of smoke and sweat. The walls ooze chalky mud. Water collects in the bottom, breeding mosquitoes. You crouch shoulder to shoulder with men who no longer bother to flinch when shells explode overhead. Rations arrive late, letters even later. The sound of picks tapping at night becomes oddly comforting, proof that you're still alive, still building something, even if it's only a hole. On the German side, discipline is absolute. Engineers reinforce the trenches with wooden planks, barbed wire, even concrete. Observation posts sprout like watchtowers. They're not leaving again. One German captain writes home, "We have traded speed for strength. Here, we shall wait until they bleed themselves dry." Across the river, British soldiers grumble about the same thing. They call the enemy line Fritz's Cliff, and every assault feels like climbing it with bare hands. The BEF, down to 60,000 fit men, can't afford many more attacks. Yet the orders keep coming. Historians still argue whether Joffre should have stopped earlier. Some claim he wasted the momentum of the Marne by throwing his exhausted armies against entrenched positions. Others say he had no choice. The Allies had to test whether the Germans would break. What's undeniable is that by the third week of September, both sides realize this war will not end in 1914. The Aisne marks the transition from lightning war to grinding stalemate. In Paris, the euphoria fades quickly. The Miracle of the Marne headlines are replaced by casualty lists. Streets once filled with cheering crowds now fill with widows waiting at post offices. Gallieni, hailed as the savior of the city, finds little solace. When a journalist asks if he's proud of the victory, he answers, "I am proud of the men." But there is no victory when so many are dead. One strange episode follows the battle. A small detachment of French troops discovers a German field map pinned under a fallen tree. On it, an officer had scribbled notes about future trench lines, months of planned positions already sketched out. It dawns on the French staff that the enemy expects this stalemate to last, perhaps indefinitely. The realization chills them more than any defeat. In the countryside, life adjusts with eerie speed. Farmers return to plow around craters. Refugees drift back to rebuild shattered homes. Children collect shrapnel as souvenirs. The war has become part of the landscape, like the rivers and trees. The front now stretches in a jagged scar from Noyon to Reims, both armies trying to outflank each other in what will soon be called the race to the sea. Every day the lines creep north, Amiens, Arras, Lille, until they reach the flat, wind-swept plains of Flanders. There, the mud will swallow them whole. For now, though, the soldiers near the Aisne begin to realize they're building something permanent. They give their new trenches names: Cave of Dreams, the Balcony, L'Abattoir, the Slaughterhouse. The humor is dark, but necessary. One French lieutenant paints a sign reading Salon de Paris above his dugout entrance and decorates it with bottle labels scavenged from the ruins. His men laugh every time they pass it. The joke keeps them sane. At night, the enemy is close enough to hear coughing, singing, even conversations. One British sentry reports hearing a German whistle a tune from Faust, so he whistles the next bar. A strange duet drifts over no man's land until an officer shouts at both of them to shut up. For a moment, in the middle of all this, you realize something profound. No one here hates the other anymore. Hatred takes energy, and energy is gone. What remains is endurance.
In late September, the rain begins. Hard, unending rain that turns trenches into trenches of water. The men dig sumps, lay boards, and curse. Boots rot off feet, rifles rust in hands. Medical officers call it trench foot, a new affliction for a new kind of war. The first cases appear this very month. The high command on both sides pretends to control the situation. Memos speak of temporary defensive operations and local adjustments, but the soldiers already know the truth. The war has stopped moving. The Battle of the Aisne ends with neither side claiming victory. The Germans hold their ridges. The Allies hold the south bank. Casualties are staggering. Nearly 200,000 men in 2 weeks of fighting. For so little gain, the cost feels obscene. When the guns finally fall silent, a French captain writes, "We have reached the end of the world, and it is a ditch." Back in Berlin, the Kaiser tries to put a brave face on the setback, declaring, "The enemy has been repelled." In Paris, the newspapers echo their own spin. "The enemy is halted." Both statements are true, and neither is. The truth is simpler. Both sides are trapped. You climb from a muddy trench one evening, the sunset streaking red across the western sky. The fields are silent, except for the distant crackle of rifles and the croak of frogs in flooded craters. You realize this is what the war will sound like now. Not the crash of battles, but the low breathing of a beast that refuses to die. It will stretch on for years, devouring a generation. But right here, in the chalk hills above the Aisne, it has already begun. By late September, the front has hardened into something permanent. The soldiers no longer speak of victory, or even of the next battle. They speak of the line. The line is everything now. It snakes from the Swiss frontier all the way to the Channel. Nearly 500 miles of men, wire, and fear. You stand somewhere in the middle of it, on a chalk ridge north of the Aisne River, and you can feel the earth humming with the vibration of picks and shovels. The Battle of the Marne is over, but its echo lingers like a fever. The ground is littered with reminders, helmets half buried in mud, horses decomposing under tarps, rifles stacked like firewood. Every inch of soil seems to hold a story. Soldiers collect souvenirs, buttons, shell casings, belt buckles stamped "Gott mit uns." They trade them for cigarettes, as if holding a piece of the enemy could make sense of the madness. In truth, no one really understands what has just happened. The newspapers in Paris call it the Great Victory. The German press calls it a tactical adjustment. Both sides are lying to themselves. What occurred on the Marne wasn't the triumph of one army over another. It was the end of illusion. The old Europe of quick wars and glorious charges has died here, buried under 10,000 tons of shrapnel. In one corner of the battlefield, British engineers begin cutting drainage trenches. They think they'll be here only a few days. They drive wooden stakes into the ground to mark positions and name them whimsically: T-Trench, Piccadilly, Bermondsey Post. A week later, those same names are carved into wooden signs and bolted to the walls of mud dugouts. The soldiers laugh, but the laughter is nervous. They're starting to suspect they'll never leave. Across the valley, the German 1st and 2nd Armies are doing the same. Their trenches are deeper, more organized, with plank floors and overhead cover. One German officer notes proudly, "Our line will hold even against God's artillery." His men nod, hammering more stakes into the soil. The irony, of course, is that both sides believe their positions are temporary, just strong enough to last until spring. No one yet imagines they'll still be here in 1918. At Joffre's headquarters, the mood is grimly determined. The French commander-in-chief reviews casualty reports by lamplight his thick fingers tracing the endless columns of numbers. Nearly 250,000 French casualties since August, and that's not counting the missing. He sighs, takes off his spectacles, and murmurs, "We will need a new army before winter." His staff officers wait in silence. One finally asks, "What shall we call this phase, mon général?" Joffrey stares at the map and says simply, "The holding." That same week, Gallieni visits the front. He arrives in a black staff car streaked with mud, the same iron composure in his posture. When soldiers recognize him, the savior of Paris, they cheer weakly. Gallieni steps out, salutes them, and says, "It was you who saved the city, not I." He spends the afternoon walking the trenches, speaking quietly to men who can hardly stand. At one dugout, a young soldier asks if the Germans will attack again. Gallieni pauses, looks out at the gray line of the horizon, and answers, "Yes, and so will we. And then we will both learn patience." It's the truest thing anyone says all month. While the armies dig in, the governments begin the second war, the war of words. In Paris, politicians boast that the Marne proves France's invincibility. In Berlin, the Kaiser proclaims that the German army is merely repositioning. Diplomats send cables to neutral nations, each side claiming moral superiority. But none of it changes the simple fact that neither side can advance another mile without losing an army. The British Expeditionary Force, once proud of its mobility, is now pinned like a butterfly to the Aisne. Its commander, Sir John French, complains endlessly to London. "We are asked to storm mountains with muskets," he writes, "against an enemy with machine guns and perfect cover." He's not exaggerating. When his men attempt to cross the river, they climb ropes under fire like climbers scaling a cliff of lead. Some make it to the opposite bank, only to be blown apart by shells before they can dig in. A British private writes home, "We have learned that courage means standing still while the air itself tries to kill you." Even small things become symbols of endurance. The Paris taxis, those bright red Renaults that carried soldiers to the Marne, still operate on the city streets. Their fares are higher now, war inflation, but Parisians tip generously, out of respect. Taxi drivers keep small tricolor flags on their dashboards, reminders that once, for a single night, they were heroes. Back near the front, the landscape transforms day by day. The once green countryside becomes a wasteland of trenches, wire, and shell holes. The French call it La Zone Rouge, the red zone. Grass stops growing. The birds have fled. When the wind blows, it carries the stench of earth and decay. You stand one evening in a captured German trench. The walls are lined with wicker, the parapet reinforced with sandbags filled with churchyard soil. A dead tree leans over the position like a crucifix. From somewhere down the line, you hear laughter, the sharp, hysterical kind that always follows terror. A soldier has found a half-buried phonograph, and it still works. The tinny voice of a cabaret singer drifts over the mud, absurdly cheerful. Someone mutters, "If she can sing, maybe we can live." It's a fragile hope, but it's all they have. Back in Berlin, Moltke the Younger is relieved of command. The news is delivered with the politeness reserved for family disgrace. Officially, it's a health matter. Unofficially, the Kaiser has lost faith in him. He retires to his estate and spends the next 2 years writing letters no one reads. In one of them, he confesses, "The war I planned no longer exists. What has taken its place is monstrous." In London, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith reads the dispatches from France and frowns. "So this is it," he murmurs. "A siege, the length of Europe." His cabinet debates sending more troops, but no one yet understands what kind of commitment that really means. As autumn deepens, the soldiers adjust to their new world. They learn to cook on trench stoves made from shell casings. They sleep under tarpaulins patched with sandbags. They carve names and dates into trench walls like prisoners marking time. And through it all, the guns never truly stop. Even when no attacks are planned, artillery batteries trade shells out of habit. Some nights, the horizon flashes for hours without anyone remembering why. A new phrase enters the soldier's vocabulary: normal bombardment.
There's one strange, tender moment recorded by a French corporal named Henri Lafargue. During a lull near Soissons, he hears a faint melody across no man's land, someone playing a harmonica. Then, to his amazement, a German voice calls out in French, "Bonsoir, camarade." A few men on both sides laugh. Someone tosses a cigarette packet over the parapet. For a few minutes, the war seems to pause, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement. We're all trapped in the same cage. Historians later call these incidents fraternization, though the officers frown upon them. But Lafargue's diary captures it perfectly. Even the enemy grows tired of hate. By the time October arrives, frost coats the trenches in the mornings. The men's breath hangs in the air like smoke. They talk less now, conserving words like ammunition. The generals still dream of breakthroughs, but the soldiers know the truth. The front will not move again for a long, long time. Somewhere in Paris, Gallieni writes one final note to Joffre. The city sleeps again. We owe that sleep to the men who do not. It's a simple line, but it could serve as an epitaph for the Marne itself, a battle that saved a city, ended an era, and opened a wound that will take generations to close. And as night falls over the Aisne, you listen to the steady tapping of picks in the dark, the heartbeat of a new kind of war. By early October 1914, the Western Front has frozen solid, lines of mud and misery stretching from the Vosges to the Channel. You can trace the New World just by the sounds it makes, the rhythmic thump of spades, the cough of rifles fired at nothing, and the hollow clang of empty canteens against tin helmets. The once bright uniforms are dulled to the color of earth. The men themselves have turned into creatures of the trench, half soldier, half mole. You climb down into one of those trenches near Soissons, the chalk walls slick with rain. It smells of wet straw, tobacco, and something metallic you try not to name. A sign nailed to a beam reads, "Hotel du Marne, no vacancies." Someone's drawn a crude Eiffel Tower beside it. Humor is a survival tool now. Without it, despair would eat everyone alive. The days follow a strange rhythm. At dawn, a burst of artillery wakes the line. Men stand to with bayonets fixed, peering over parapets through the fog. Then comes breakfast: stale bread, tinned beef, coffee brewed from burnt chicory. After that, long hours of waiting, repairing walls, cleaning rifles, patching uniforms. Sometimes you hear the faint click of a German shovel across the way. Digging, too. It's unnerving. War reduced to the quiet industry of men building graves for themselves in advance. The Aisne sector becomes the proving ground for this new reality. Every attempt to break the stalemate fails. French attacks up the slopes toward Craonne are slaughtered by machine gun fire. British attempts to cross the river dissolve in sheets of shrapnel. The Germans, better supplied and already adapting to defensive warfare, deepen their trenches into fortresses. Barbed wire appears for the first time in serious quantity. One astonished French officer writes, "They have fenced themselves in like farmers, and they shoot like demons from behind it." It's here that the term no man's land is first whispered. A thin strip of churned soil between the lines, sometimes only 50 meters wide. Nothing survives there for long. Crows circle but rarely land. The grass is gone, replaced by puddles that reflect the gray sky like shards of mirror. When a man falls out there, both sides stare at him, helpless to drag him back. At night, flares hiss overhead, bathing the trenches in ghost-white light. For a moment, the battlefield becomes a negative photograph, every shadow reversed. You can see faces clearly then, German and French, staring across at each other like reflections in glass. And when the light fades, the darkness returns thicker than before. Meanwhile, the generals keep planning offensives. They still think in 19th century terms of decisive battles and open flanks. The phrase breakthrough becomes a kind of superstition. Maps sprout arrows like weeds, each promising movement where none will ever come. The soldiers joke that headquarters should issue boots made of paper to march across those arrows. Joffre, unshakable as a mountain, insists the French army will push north and outflank the Germans before winter. The British agree, if only to stay in motion. Thus begins the race to the sea, a bizarre lateral migration where both sides extend their trenches northward, trying to envelop each other and ending up merely expanding the stalemate. Towns fall and are abandoned. Arras, Lens, Lille. By November, the front reaches Flanders, and the sea itself ends the race. But before that finish line, there's one last surge of movement, the First Battle of Ypres. And it is here, in the wet fields of Belgium, that the last of the old armies die. You march with British regulars toward Ypres, their red-stained trousers and khaki tunics indistinguishable under layers of mud. They're proud men, veterans of empire, but even they sense this fight will be different. The Germans are throwing fresh reservists forward, boys with school books still in their packs, old men with gray in their beards. Kindermord bei Ypern, the Germans will later call it, the massacre of the innocents. When the battle begins, it sounds like the world tearing itself apart. Shells crash into the medieval city, setting roofs ablaze. The cathedral collapses with a roar that shakes the ground for miles. British, French, and Belgian troops cling to shallow trenches, firing until their barrels glow red. Machine gun belts run dry. Men throw stones when the ammunition's gone. A corporal named Adrien Carton de Wiart takes a bullet through the face, loses an eye, and keeps fighting. Another soldier, finding himself surrounded, fires his last round and waves mockingly before a shell vaporizes him. Gallows humor becomes gospel. A sergeant yells, "If you're hit, shout taxi. Maybe one will come from Paris." The men actually laugh, even as shells fall around them. Historians still argue whether Ypres saves the Channel ports or merely freezes the front in a new place, but what everyone agrees on is the cost. Between October and November 1914, the Allies lose over 300,000 men, the Germans perhaps more. The once elite British Expeditionary Force, those old contemptibles, is effectively destroyed. When replacements arrive the next spring, they find a landscape already legendary. Flanders, the graveyard of Europe. Through it all, the weather changes. The autumn rains arrive early, turning trenches into rivers of mud. Boots rot, socks dissolve, rifles jam. The soldiers begin wrapping their feet in newspaper, stuffing straw into their coats for warmth. Frostbite claims as many men as bullets. One French officer jokes, "We shall all die of pneumonia before honor." Back in Paris, Gallieni can only shake his head. His city is safe, but the war has outgrown its savior. He writes to Joffre, warning that prolonged stalemate will bleed France white. Joffre replies with a single line, "Better bled than beaten." In Berlin, Moltke, now sidelined, reads the same casualty lists and mutters, "The blood of our youth is the mortar of this wall." He isn't wrong. The front, now continuous, becomes a kind of monstrous organism. Railways feed it. Factories nourish it. Propaganda keeps its heart beating. Every week, new inventions appear. Periscopes made from mirrors, trench mortars, steel helmets. The soldiers adapt faster than the generals. One French poilu strings empty wine bottles along the parapet. When a German patrol trips the wire, the clinking glass gives warning. A British private crafts a periscope rifle to shoot without exposing his head. Ingenuity becomes as essential as courage. But courage has changed meaning. It's no longer charging bravely into fire. It's staying sane in a world without sky. One night, during a lull near Reims, you sit beside a group of French soldiers sharing a candle. They speak softly, voices thick with fatigue. One of them, a farmer from the Loire, says, "Before the war, I used to curse the rain. Now I pray for it. It hides us from the shells." Another replies, "Rain, snow, mud, nothing can be worse than waiting." They all nod. The candle sputters out, and in the darkness, someone hums a lullaby. That same week, rumors spread along the line that Christmas will bring peace. Home by Noel, the officers promise. The men smile, but don't believe it.
They've already seen too much to trust the calendar. Still, even amid despair, there are glimpses of humanity. During a ceasefire to recover the wounded, a French medic crawls halfway into no man's land to tend a German who's been calling for help all day. When he finishes bandaging the man's leg, the German presses a small photograph into his hand: a wife, 2 children, a dog. The medic tucks it into his pocket, unable to speak. Later that night, he writes in his diary, "We have become each other's witnesses." In late October, as the mud deepens and the rain hardens into sleet, the first rumors of chemical shells circulate. The scientists are joining the war now. One French captain jokes bitterly, "Perhaps they'll invent a gas that puts us all to sleep. Peace in a puff of smoke." You watch him laugh, then cough from the damp, and realize he isn't joking. By winter, the line is complete. A serpent of earthworks coiled across the continent. The generals still talk about offensives, but everyone else knows. The next few months will not be battles, but survival. Above the trenches, the stars shine cold and indifferent. Below, candles flicker in dugouts where men write letters they'll never send. One British soldier scratches into the wall with a bayonet. The Marne stopped them. The mud stops us. And that's the truth of it. The battle that saved civilization has also chained it to the soil. By the first frost of November 1914, the guns along the Marne have quieted, but only in comparison to the madness that came before. The battlefield is no longer a place of advance or retreat. It is a geography of endurance. The soldiers call it la boue éternelle, the eternal mud. You can almost feel it sucking at your boots as you walk between sandbag walls glistening under sleet. The trenches wind and fork like the veins of a dying animal. Everywhere you look, men are learning to live like burrowing creatures. A squad of French poilus constructs a makeshift kitchen out of an ammunition crate and broken helmets. British sappers dig sumps to drain the water that seeps in faster than they can bail it out. Rats, the new lords of the front, scurry fat and fearless among sleeping men. One soldier swears he saw a rat wearing a human ring on its tail, dragging it like a trophy. No one doubts him. You overhear a conversation between 2 officers. "Do you think they'll attack again before spring?" The other shrugs. "If they do, they'll drown before they reach us." War has become weather, inescapable, impersonal, and everywhere. Far to the west, the Battle of Ypres is still raging, though battle hardly fits. It's a slaughterhouse, a churn of mud and blood where men vanish into craters only to reappear as rumors. When reinforcements arrive, they follow trails marked by the corpses of those who went before. "This is not war," one German lieutenant writes. "It is geology." The First Battle of Ypres is technically ending, but in truth, it never will. The front simply solidifies there, a scar across Flanders. The same pattern repeats everywhere: movement, halt, entrenchment. Even the generals begin to realize that the Western Front is not a campaign, it's an invention. They have built something no one knows how to dismantle. In Paris, Gallieni sits in his office, reading dispatches that grow heavier with every courier. His once bright eyes have dimmed. When asked about the future, he says, "The front will hold." But at what cost? He has become a reluctant prophet. The miracle he helped create has trapped Europe in a purgatory of its own making. The newspapers still speak in triumph. "Germany defeated on the Marne," one headline boasts. But the truth, whispered in officers' messes, is simpler. Germany is not defeated. She is stuck. And so is everyone else. Even the civilians begin to feel the shift. In villages near the front, families live among ruins that no longer shock them. A baker in Meaux kneads dough on a table pitted with shell fragments. Children play war in the streets, using unexploded grenades as pretend toys until an explosion reminds them that play and death now share the same rules. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Helmuth von Moltke, the man who once commanded the invasion, sits alone in his study, staring at the map that had promised everything. He writes to his wife, "The world I knew has ended."
we have entered the age of the ant. He's not wrong. Trench life has become a science. Every army publishes manuals on drainage, sanitation, and trench rotation. Soldiers learn to calculate shell angles, to sleep sitting up so rats don't crawl across their faces, to distinguish shell types by sound. The whistle of an approaching 77mm shell earns the nickname whiz-bang. The slow, moaning descent of heavy artillery becomes the crump. A grim vocabulary is born. Even air war, barely a year old, begins to evolve. Primitive biplanes buzz overhead, taking photographs or dropping hand grenades the size of coffee cans. Pilots wave at each other in passing, more sportsmen than killers, for now. One French aviator, Roland Garros, mounts a machine gun directly on his plane, inventing a terrifying new concept, the fighter. He shoots down 3 Germans before being forced to land behind enemy lines. The race for the skies has begun, another theater in a war with no ceiling. On the ground, the line itself becomes sacred. Men die not for conquest, but for a trench number. A few meters of mud with names like Trench 38 or The Angle. Each gain, measured in yards, costs hundreds of lives. One general writes, "We advance not by territory, but by sacrifice." At night, when the shelling pauses, the landscape hums with strange sounds. Frogs croaking in flooded shell holes, boots sloshing through mud, whispered prayers in dozens of languages: French, English, German, Arabic, Hindi. The war has already pulled in men from every corner of empire. Colonial regiments, Senegalese tirailleurs, Indian Sikhs, Algerians, Canadians stand shoulder to shoulder in a Europe that had never imagined them equals until now. They fight, they die, and history remembers too few of their names. You imagine one of them, a Senegalese rifleman named Diop, crouched in a trench near Soissons. He fingers a charm from home, a scrap of cloth blessed by his village marabout. Around him, snow begins to fall, settling gently on sandbags and corpses alike. For a moment, the front looks peaceful, almost beautiful. Then a flare bursts overhead and the illusion is gone. The soldiers begin to speak of ghosts. They swear the trenches are haunted, the same faces appearing and disappearing in the dark, the same voices calling names long after the men are gone. A chaplain dismisses it as fatigue, but one night he sees it too. A figure walking calmly through no man's land under shellfire, untouched. When he blinks, it's gone. He never preaches about heaven again. Historians still argue whether this was collective trauma or simple imagination. What's undeniable is that the line between life and death here is thinner than breath. As winter grips the front, frost covers the parapets like powdered glass. Rifles freeze to hands, boots fuse to the mud. Firewood becomes treasure. When someone manages to boil tea, men cluster around like worshippers. The steam smells faintly of home. Then, in late December, something unexpected happens. Orders circulate quietly. Hold positions. Conserve ammunition. No major attacks during Christmas. The men barely register it. Just another order in an endless series. But as Christmas Eve approaches, something stirs. You stand near the village of St. Yves, where British and German trenches lie only 70 yards apart. Snow has fallen, muffling the world. At dusk, the Germans begin singing, first softly, then stronger. Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. The British listen, confused. Then one private, voice trembling, joins in English. Silent night, holy night. For the first time in months, the battlefield is filled not with gunfire, but with harmony. Flares go up, but no one shoots. Then, cautiously, figures emerge from both trenches. They meet halfway, hands raised. Cigarettes, chocolate, and buttons are exchanged. Someone produces a football, and soon, there's a game. Mud for grass, laughter for gunfire. A British sergeant calls it the strangest miracle I'll ever see. Historians will later debate how widespread it was, but for that night, across dozens of sectors, the war truly pauses. Men bury their dead together, share brandy, trade addresses. One German soldier sketches a British comrade by candlelight and promises to send the drawing after the war.
When dawn comes, both sides drift back to their trenches. Orders arrive, stern, uncompromising. No fraternization with the enemy. The guns resume by noon. The brief peace dissolves under the next barrage. But something lingers. Letters home speak of it in hushed tones, as if the soldiers themselves can't quite believe what they witnessed. The enemy, one writes, looked just like us, only colder. Back in Paris, Gallieni reads reports of the Christmas truces and shakes his head. "It will not happen again," he says. "We are teaching men to hate too well." He's right. The moment passes, swallowed by the machinery of total war. Yet it remains a testament to the flicker of humanity that survives even here, in the mud of the Marne's legacy. You close your eyes and picture it. The frozen fields of France, the faint glow of candles on trench ledges, and two songs, one in German, one in English, rising together into the cold night air. For a heartbeat, the world remembered what it was before it forgot itself. Winter descends like a curtain. The first flakes fall over the ruined fields of Flanders, settling softly on helmets, rifles, and the bodies that no one can reach. You stand in a trench just north of Ypres, the snowflakes melting on your eyelashes, mixing with the acrid smoke that never seems to clear. The world smells of rust and wet leather. A horse carcass, half buried in the parapet, has frozen solid. The men have draped a blanket over it and call it the quartermaster. Gallows humor is still the only defense. By now, the war has changed from fire to frost. Every sound is muffled as if even the guns are tired. You hear a sentry whisper, "I can't tell if the thunder's gone or if I've just gone deaf." Another answers, "It's only the world catching its breath." The trenches are deeper now, reinforced with timber and corrugated iron. They've stopped pretending this will be over soon. Engineers install wooden walkways. Drainage pipes gurgle underfoot. The routine is relentless. 2 days in the front line, 4 days in reserve, 1 day of rest. If you're lucky. It's a rhythm of mud, cold, and waiting. At dawn, frost turns the fields to glass. Men emerge from dugouts wrapped in blankets, their breath fogging the air. They scrape ice from rifle bolts, light stoves with scraps of old orders, and curse in unison when the fires refuse to catch. A French sergeant jokes, "If hell freezes over, we'll still be on duty." Every trench has its characters. The cook who can turn anything into stew, rat, turnip, or both. The barber who sharpens razors on bayonets. The corporal who swears his grandmother once met Napoleon and therefore knows how to win this war. You learn to love them because they make the waiting bearable. The generals still talk of offensives, though the men call them mud walks. Plans circulate for spring, a breakthrough at Arras perhaps, or a push along the Somme. They all sound the same, arrows on maps, optimism printed in ink. The soldiers nod politely, then go back to tightening their boots. Meanwhile, a new figure stalks the skies above the trenches, the aeroplane. What began as a curiosity has become a daily menace. German Taubes glide overhead, dropping small bombs or scouting positions. French and British pilots chase them, waving pistols like duelists. When one crashes behind the lines, men rush to see it, marveling at the twisted wreck of canvas and wire. A mechanic murmurs, "They're fighting up there now, too. No place left for peace." Historians later call this the industrialization of the battlefield. Factories turning out shells by the million. Trains delivering death by timetable. But standing here, it doesn't feel mechanical. It feels personal. Every shell that lands nearby is a private argument between you and fate. At night, the sky glows faintly from the fires of nearby towns. Reims, Soissons, Arras. The stars are still there, but they seem further away than before. In one trench, a British chaplain reads from a small Bible. His voice trembles, not from cold, but from doubt.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he begins, and someone interrupts softly. You forgot to mention the mud. The men laugh, a low, tired sound, and the prayer goes on anyway. By January 1915, disease has joined the ranks. Trenchfoot turns toes black and numb. Lice crawl in seams and collars. A medical officer notes that some soldiers begin naming their lice like pets. At least these companions stay, one man quips. Dysentery follows, then influenza. For every man killed by a bullet, 3 are carried out on stretchers by medics too numb to speak. And yet, amidst all this decay, something astonishing happens. Life continues. Mail arrives. Photographs are pinned to trench walls. Cigarettes are traded for wine. One soldier receives a box from home containing a small potted fern, his mother's attempt to bring him a piece of garden peace. He keeps it alive all winter, watering it with melted snow. In Paris, Gallieni begins to fade from the headlines. The nation has moved on from its savior to its new heroes, Joffre, Foch, and Pétain. He doesn't mind. When a reporter asks if he misses the limelight, he replies, "The light is for those still running. I stand where the shadows are." Still, he follows every communiqué from the front, circling names of villages like prayers. Ypres, N, Artois. Meanwhile, on the German side, morale begins to crack. Letters intercepted by French intelligence tell the story. We were promised a quick victory. Now, we sleep in holes. Some soldiers write that they dream of the Marne, not as triumph or defeat, but as the last time they felt movement. One confides, "I long for the march. Even retreat was better than this waiting." The historians later find poetry in that irony, that the battle meant to end movement, created a world where no one could move again. January bleeds into February. Snowmelt fills the trenches, freezing again each night. You watch men chip ice from water barrels, pour it into tin cups, and toast the sunrise as if it were champagne. Someone hums an old marching song, slower now, turning it into a lullaby. News from beyond the front feels like fiction. There are rumors of Russians freezing in Poland, of Turks entering the war, of Japan seizing Pacific Islands. To the soldiers, these are bedtime stories. The only world that matters stretches a few hundred meters in either direction. And yet, even in this narrow universe, beauty sneaks through. On clear mornings, mist rises from the fields like breath. The frost sparkles on barbed wire, each droplet catching the sun for a heartbeat before melting. "Look," says one soldier, "diamonds." His friend replies, "Only if we live to sell them." Sometimes, when the shelling stops for a whole day, a rare luxury, the men climb from the trenches to stretch their legs. They find relics from the battle months before, rusted shells, dented helmets, an unburied drum still bearing the French tricolor. One officer kneels beside a field gun half swallowed by earth and says, "Here lies August," because that's what they've all been doing, burying August. The Marne was a miracle, yes, but also a farewell. It saved Paris and doomed a generation. Even now, the name carries weight. When new recruits arrive from the south, the veterans point to the horizon and whisper, "That's where the Marne saved us." The newcomers nod, eyes wide, imagining glory. The older men simply stare at the ground, knowing what that salvation cost. As spring approaches, Joffre plans new offensives. The generals talk of Artois and Champagne, of renewed vigor and decisive victories. But the soldiers already know the pattern: attack, stall, dig, repeat. Still, they will go, because that's what armies do when told the war will soon be over. Gallieni, watching from Paris, mutters the same phrase he used months before. Paris will defend itself. Only now, it means something else entirely. The city defends not its walls, but its memory. Its belief that the sacrifice at the Marne meant something larger than survival. In truth, it did. The Marne transformed Europe's imagination. It taught generals that industry could grind courage into dust, and it taught ordinary people that endurance could be a form of victory.
But here, in the trenches of 1915, that lesson feels abstract. The only truth that matters is the next sunrise, and whether your trench stays dry long enough to see it. As night falls, you watch the snow settle once more over the scarred land. The horizon flickers with distant artillery, red as a heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the lines, a single church bell rings. For a moment, the sound carries you back to the days before maps, before machines, before the world learned how to stop moving. And then it fades, swallowed by the endless hum of war. March 1915. The air no longer tastes of frost, but of thawing earth, gunpowder, and rot. You can smell spring before you can see it. The damp wind carries the scent of turned soil and decay, mingled so perfectly it's hard to tell which is which. You stand in the shallow lip of a trench near Crayon, where the mud sucks at your boots and each footstep sounds like something breathing beneath the ground. The thaw changes everything, and nothing. The war still hums its low, mechanical song. The birds have returned, but their songs now compete with the whine of shells overhead. It's the season of renewed offensives, and the generals, who have spent winter poring over maps and reports, are restless. They promise that the coming campaigns in Artois and Champagne will break the stalemate. The men nod, as always, and go back to fixing their bayonets. A corporal writes home. They say the ground will dry soon. I suppose that means we will all die soon. His handwriting trembles slightly, the ink blurring where raindrops fall on the page. In Paris, Gallieni reads the first reports of the spring plans. He's skeptical. His health is declining, his cough deepening, but his mind remains sharp. If we could not move them in September, he murmurs to a visitor, how will we move them now that they've learned how to dig? His warning goes unheard. The High Command is convinced that more artillery, more shells, more guns will make the difference. They are only half wrong. When the attacks begin, the land itself seems to revolt. In Champagne, shells fall so thick that the horizon disappears in a wall of smoke. The French 75mm guns fire until their barrels glow red. The men cheer the first few hours of bombardment. It feels like vengeance for the Marne. But when they climb from the trenches to advance, they find the German lines still intact. The machine guns chatter, cutting down whole waves. One unit of Moroccan troops, proud veterans of the colonial wars, advances bravely across open ground and loses 85% of its strength in 20 minutes. Those who reach the enemy wire find it uncut. They cling to the coils like insects, shredded by fire. A French officer watching through binoculars lowers them slowly and whispers, "C'est l'enfer, hell itself." Historians still argue whether these early offensives were acts of bravery or futility. The numbers don't care. By April, tens of thousands lie dead for a few hundred yards of mud. Meanwhile, the Germans are trying their own solution: chemistry. Near Ypres, on the 22nd of April, green-yellow clouds begin to drift across no man's land. The men stare, unsure whether to laugh or panic. Then the gas hits, choking, searing, stripping the lungs raw. Entire French regiments drop their rifles and claw at their throats. A Canadian nurse arriving the next day writes, "The air still stinks of chlorine and terror." The world has just invented chemical warfare. You can almost hear the disbelief spreading along the trenches. The soldiers cough and spit, wrap rags over their mouths soaked in urine, an old miner's trick that actually helps. They survive, but something fundamental has changed. War no longer obeys even its own madness. In Paris, when word reaches Gallieni, he stands silently for a long time. "So," he says at last, "we have taught the earth to kill for us." Spring drags into summer. The Marne, once a name of victory, has faded into myth. The front it birthed now sprawls like a sleeping monster, devouring all who feed it. Each week brings a new offensive.
each one consuming another generation of volunteers. The French wear blue-gray uniforms now, horizon blue, designed to blend with the sky, but it makes little difference when the sky itself is on fire. The British Expeditionary Force, rebuilt with new divisions, learns to fight a war of paperwork. Every action requires a form, every casualty a report. A private jokes that the pen kills more efficiently than the bayonet. Behind the lines, life takes on an eerie normality. There are field cinemas, chapels, even cafes serving coffee made from roasted barley. Letters still arrive. One soldier's wife writes, "Our boy started school. He asked when Papa will stop fighting. I told him soon. I lied." The generals call these months the wearing out period. The soldiers call it the meat grinder. And yet, amid all this monotony of death, the front develops a strange ecology. Flowers bloom in the craters, poppies wild and red as wounds. Birds nest in empty helmets. Frogs croak in shell holes filled with rain. The world refuses to stay dead, even when men insist on killing it. You find yourself watching a pair of swallows dart through the smoke, weaving between the lines. A sergeant beside you mutters, "If only we could fly that easily." Another replies, "We'd still have to land somewhere." Gallieni, though far from the front, remains restless. He spends his days visiting hospitals, shaking hands with bandaged soldiers, asking their names. One nurse recalls how he sat by a man with no legs and said, "You've held the line longer than I ever did." The soldier wept. Gallieni simply patted his hand and whispered, "You did not lose them. You left them in France." That summer, as he grows weaker, he writes to Joffrey one final time. When this war is remembered, they will speak of the Marne. But the true miracle is not that we stopped them once. It is that we still stand. Joffrey never replies. He's consumed by the logistics of 1,000,000 men. But Gallieni's words echo quietly through the ranks. They remind everyone, even those half buried in the trenches, that standing can be an act of defiance. As August approaches, the anniversary of the war's beginning passes with no ceremony. The men mark it only with a joke. "Happy birthday, old beast." Somewhere, a phonograph plays a scratchy waltz. A French soldier dances alone in the mud, arms wrapped around an invisible partner. When asked what he's doing, he says, "I promised her a dance when I came home. Might as well start now." Historians later call these months the consolidation of the Western Front, but that sounds far too neat. The truth is simpler. Exhaustion pretending to be order. And still, across the fields where the first taxis once carried reinforcements, you can find relics of that early miracle. Rusted shell casings, twisted wire, and the skeletons of Renault cabs, their tires long rotted away. Locals call them les voitures de la Marne. They've become monuments, silent witnesses to the night Paris refused to die. At dusk, when the guns pause, you can almost imagine hearing their engines again. That humming chorus of defiance rolling down the moonlit roads toward destiny. The sound mingles with the sighing wind through poplars and the slow, steady beat of distant artillery. The war moves on, swallowing all things. But the Marne remains the hinge, the moment where the world could have ended and didn't. And perhaps that's why, even years later, soldiers who survived the trenches will say quietly, when asked where it all began, "It began at the Marne. Everything after was just the echo." As the last light fades over the river, the water runs red with sunset. Not blood this time, but the reflection of a sky that seems, at last, to be resting. You breathe in the damp air, heavy with history, and whisper what so many have thought before. We stopped them. And though the guns still thunder far away, for a heartbeat, the world almost believes you. It is the summer of 1918, and the Marne is back in the headlines again. 4 long years after the miracle that saved Paris, the same river now witnesses the beginning of the end. You stand once more on its banks, though everything looks different. The trenches are deeper, the guns bigger, and the faces younger. Those who fought here in 1914 are either buried beneath the soil or sitting in hospitals, gray and hollow-eyed. But the name remains the same, the Marne, and that alone gives the new generation courage.
The Germans, desperate for a final blow, have launched what they call the Friedensturm, the peace offensive. They dream of forcing France to its knees before the Americans can arrive in full. For a moment, it almost works. In July, their stormtroopers surge across the river, striking toward Chateau Thierry and Reims. Villages burn, bridges collapse. It feels like the old nightmare returned, the same thunder of 1914 echoing again down the valley. But the world has changed. This time, the Allies are ready. Ferdinand Foch, once Joffrey's subordinate, now commands all Allied armies. Tanks rumble behind him. American divisions, fresh from training fields, march beside the worn French regiments. Even the sky hums with new weapons. Biplanes strafing trenches, observation balloons tethered like fat ghosts. On July 15, 1918, the German offensive slams into the Allied line and stops dead. French and American troops hold the crossings at Dormont, Epernay, and Reims. A week later, Foch unleashes his counterstroke. More than 300,000 men drive the Germans back across the river. The tide that once surged toward Paris now retreats east, never to return. Historians will call it the Second Battle of the Marne, but for those who fight it, it feels like the last echo of a prophecy finally fulfilled. You can imagine the scene at dusk on July 18th. The sky alive with artillery flashes, the river glinting like molten metal, and the faint roar of aircraft circling above. A young American lieutenant writes, "The Marne looks peaceful from the air, like a ribbon of gold. You'd never guess how many ghosts live beneath it." The ghosts are real, though. The bones of 1914 lie beneath the plow furrows, beneath the poppies, beneath the boots of men who don't even know whose ground they're standing on. Somewhere below them, the old trenches still exist, filled in, but not forgotten. Among the officers, a name keeps coming up: Gallieni. He's been dead for 2 years now, passing quietly in 1916, just as Verdun consumed the world's attention. But when Paris hears of the new battle, newspapers resurrect his words from that first September. "I have received the mandate to defend Paris against the invader. That mandate I shall carry out to the end." The public repeats it like a prayer, and in a way, he was right. The defense never ended. It just moved eastward, trench by trench, generation by generation. The Marne becomes not just a place, but a symbol, the point where the unstoppable was stopped. When the Germans fall back for the last time, when their high command realizes the offensive is doomed, it's as if Europe finally exhales after holding its breath for 4 years. The line that began here in 1914 has circled back upon itself, completing a grim circle of history. But that realization doesn't feel triumphant. It feels heavy, solemn. You picture a French officer standing on a bridge over the river, watching the last German shells fall short into the water. Around him, the poppies sway in the evening wind, red as memory. He says softly, "We began here, we end here. Paris once again is safe." The bells ring just as they did 4 years before, but this time they ring for the dead as much as the living. When the armistice finally comes in November, the world celebrates. But those who remember the first Marne feel only exhaustion. The survivors call themselves les anciens de la Marne, the old ones of the Marne. They march in the victory parade, their uniforms faded, their eyes hollow, their medals glinting in the weak winter sun. Children throw flowers, politicians give speeches, but the men of 1914 simply nod to each other, knowing that the truest victory is endurance. Historians still debate the meaning of the First Marne. Was it the battle that saved civilization, or just the prelude to catastrophe? Some argue that had the Germans taken Paris quickly, the war might have ended sooner. Others counter that such an outcome would have reshaped Europe into something unrecognizable,
a continent built on fear instead of defiance. You can find Gallieni's statue today near the Invalides in Paris. The old governor, standing erect, one hand resting on his sword, the other pointing eastward. Tourists snap pictures, unaware that they're standing on ground that once trembled with artillery. At his feet, an inscription reads simply, "A Gallieni, défenseur de Paris." The simplicity feels right. He was never one for grand speeches. His greatest statement was an action. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, locals say they can hear the faint echo of engines down the Boulevard des Invalides, the taxis of the Marne, forever driving through memory toward the front. It's nonsense, of course, but comforting nonsense. The city remembers in its own way. Even the river itself has changed character. Once a symbol of crisis, it has become a place of pilgrimage. Every year, veterans return to its banks to lay wreaths in silence. They come from France, Britain, even Germany. One year, an elderly German colonel and a French captain find themselves side by side at the same monument. After a long pause, the German says, "You stopped us here." The Frenchman answers, "We stopped ourselves." They share a cigarette and walk away. By the 1930s, school children learned to recite the miracle of the Marne as if it were myth. Teachers draw neat maps showing arrows and counter-arrows, the clean geometry of textbooks that hides the mud and terror. Few mention the broken bodies or the smell of unburied horses. But in every classroom, someone asks, "Did it have to happen?" And no one can answer. Even now, historians still argue over details. Whether Moltke lost control of his armies, whether von Kluck's detour doomed the plan, whether Joffre's calm saved France. Yet behind all the strategy lies the same truth. The Marne was decided not by brilliance, but by fatigue. The Germans were too tired to win, the French too stubborn to lose. And that, in the end, is the story of the Western Front. The Marne was not a battle of heroes, but of humanity, refusing to vanish. Gallieni's taxis, Joffre's railroads, Monuri's desperate counterattack, all were improvisations, acts of survival stitched together into victory. Out of chaos came a pause, and out of that pause grew 4 years of stalemate that remade the world. But even stalemate has its own quiet nobility. It's the nobility of men who stand in mud for months, who keep their rifles clean in rain and frost, who share cigarettes and hope when both are scarce. The Marne taught Europe that civilization is not a wall that keeps out darkness. It is the fragile light that flickers within it. So now, as the guns fade into memory, you find yourself standing on the banks of that same river, quiet at last, reflecting the evening sky. The water moves slowly, as if burdened by what it remembers. Somewhere, far off, a church bell tolls, soft and deliberate. Close your eyes and listen. You can almost hear them. The murmur of soldiers resting on the far shore, their voices blending with the rustle of poplar leaves. The river carries them gently onward, as it always has. Gallieni is long gone. Joffre too. And even the nations they fought for have changed. But the spirit that held the line at the Marne still lingers. Not in parades or monuments, but in quiet resilience. In the will to stand, to endure, to rebuild even after the world shatters. You imagine the lights of Paris glowing faintly on the horizon, just as they did in 1914. Back then, everyone thought the world was ending. Yet somehow, it didn't. Somehow, they found a way through. So, before you drift to sleep tonight, remember that. The stillness after chaos, the courage to hold on when the map says you shouldn't. Because history, at its core, isn't made by generals or plans. It's made by people like you, standing your ground in whatever battle you face. Now take a deep breath. Let the echoes fade. The river runs quietly again, and the night is calm. Sweet dreams.